and also like in the startup world, I just was really surrounded by men always. And I kind of had to, I think I felt like I had to show up in a male way to be in the room and respected. And now that I'm sitting in this seat, I feel like I can kind of decide how I want to show up in a more authentic way to me, which is feminine.
Hi, Merisa. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. And I'm so happy that I met you recently, and especially to hear that you are in the construction world too. So I cannot wait to hear your story and have a conversation about your life also and your profession and all of that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me, Angie. What a pleasure to talk to you and to meet you the other day. And I immediately just loved everything that you stand for and your whole vibe. I love it. So I am Merisa. I'm the founder of Kit Renovation, which is a fixed price, tech-enabled bathroom renovation company. This is not my idea. It's not my baby. It's my adopted baby. So a few years ago, the incubator that is owned by IAC, it's called NUCO. They do what incubators do. They stand up businesses that they think are good ideas. They had this insight from the parent company, IAC, who owns Angie's List and Home Advisor and Care.com and a bunch of things. So they had this insight that a fixed price bathroom renovation company was testing surprisingly well with millennials. They had a few other offerings at that time that were doing well, like fixed price fencing, roofing, whatever. And they thought that they would just kind of like throw out some ads and see what stuck. And fixed price bathroom renovations really resonated with millennials. And, you know, it's super intuitive why, right? Like millennials are friction averse. They're very comfortable digitally. They're coming to a housing market that is aging, right? So like most of the inventory on the market is like probably as older bathrooms. So they asked me to come on because I had experience in startups, even though I'm a lawyer by training. So they asked me to come on and see if I could stand it up and see if we had anything here, if we could even do it, this crazy idea. And this was in August of 2020. And I said yes. And
the middle of the pandemic.
It was, yeah. So it was a super interesting time because, you know, I had actually, my prior startup had shut down because we were manufacturing in China and
yes,
they ran out of money. They laid off the whole team, which was fine because I was home with 3 small kids, like homeschooling. So I was like, no problem. Bye. I'm busy. Perfect. See you later. There's no way I could have worked anyhow. But by August 2020, you know, things kind of like leveled a little. And the renovation industry was at a 50-year all-time high, which meant a lot of things. One is that like everyone in the world was staring at their 4 walls and needed to renovate. And also the price of labor and materials skyrocketed. So it was really an uphill battle because although the cost of like renovating a bathroom doubled effectively from the prior year, like in terms of like labor and materials, the market didn't know that yet. So we had a really big education play where we had to kind of like be the bearer of bad news to tell the market that actually renovating your small 60 square foot bathroom was going to be pretty expensive. So that was a hurdle that we don't really need to like battle so much anymore because people kind of like understand where the market is a little bit now. Yeah, so it was August 2020. It was a crazy time.
Wow. So going back a little bit more, Merisa, you mentioned that you are a lawyer, right? That was your trading. And then tell us a little bit about that transition, because you're a lawyer and I think then you were in marketing, if I'm correct, and now construction. So tell us a little bit about that transition and why did you end up making all of them?
Yeah, I mean, I really loved law because of the logic and the research and the writing. And law is excellent training, right? For like how to be a professional and how to be buttoned up and answer an email, right? And like have like write a white paper and whatever. And I was in law for a few years, but it was a kind of a hard time to be in law because it was in 2007, 2008, like the market was crashing and it was a little bit difficult. So I transitioned to nonprofits for a few years with a target demographic being really myself, right? Like people in their 30s, 40s who were middle to upper middle class and wanted to be involved in something meaningful. And my focus is on marketing to those people. And through those roles, I really started to like understand how to put myself in the seat of the consumer or the target audience. And that was like invaluable for me. So I got a lot of experience in terms of like just overcoming hurdles, like startup life, building websites, branding, copywriting, all that stuff, right? And all the back end that's involved there for how to really like get to the heart of what matters to someone. And then I transitioned to startups and I was with a startup called Silo. Basically they were speaking to a convenience customer who, was typically like a busy mom who didn't have time to, do all the extra stuff. But really just wanted like to create a beautiful home for herself or her family. And getting to know that convenience customer was such a perfect on-ramp to this role I have now because it's a very similar profile. It's someone who wants something to be easy because they're doing a lot of other important stuff. And like, and also like, it's easy for me because like, I'm the customer, right? Like I'm a working mom with 3 kids. If I can delegate something to someone capable or something capable, great. If I can afford to delegate it and throw some money at it, a modest amount of money will make my life a little easier, free up a little time for other things, great. And so like, to me, that's our customer actually. Like our customer comes in, they see one of our off-the-shelf designer bathrooms, one of 15 designs. They're like, great, can you give this one to me? Can you just put it in my bathroom? And that's what we do. So we have them scan their bathroom. We create a photorealistic rendering of whatever design they chose specifically applied to their space. And then we have automations that flow down the fulfillment line to actually get a palette of materials show up on their driveway. And then we can install it, or if they're outside our flagship geography, they get someone else to install it.
Yeah. Oh, that is awesome. So you really see the value of every profession that you had in your career, right? Now in your startup, in your business, right? So how have you, what mistakes have you made, or what things have you learned from the past that probably made you smarter this time with your business?
I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty hard on myself. So I'm very aware of all of them.
Yes.
I make mistakes all the time. But what I've learned is a successful person and a successful business has a tight feedback loop where they're not making that mistake twice. So, for bathrooms, there's like only so many mistakes you can make in a bathroom, right? And so I make sure to kind of, and just from a totally tactical standpoint, like our team has a very tight feedback loop and like structure to actually execute that. But like as myself as a person, I'm coming to a point in my career where I feel like very humbly, I'm only just now kind of realizing my worth. which, you know, I have imposter syndrome as a woman in construction. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. But I've learned that no matter how much all these other people are puffing out their chests, um, I know what my superpowers are. And I just have to know my worth and be curious and humble, and take the ego out of it. I think there's power in restraint. You know, I've had some pretty toxic work environments in the past, and that is the opposite of what I want for my team that I'm building now. And to me, like a company culture that you want to show up to is the most important thing. And that goes for, you know, my head of fulfillment who used to work at IKEA and Pottery Barn down to like the guys who are laying the tile. I want everyone to enjoy showing up to work and know that like we support them as people. And, you know, we just, it's really like the golden rule that we follow, which is we just treat others how we want to be treated. And I feel like that goes a really long way. And that's the North Star, I think, when you're like really navigating sticky situations. I think it's just really trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, whether it's, you know, even just yesterday, it was a contractor who like wasn't doing what he said he was going to do, right? He like didn't show up. But then I was like, I don't think this is a bad guy. Like, I think he's working with some real constraints here. Let's understand what is handcuffing him. So we dug a little deeper, and like it turns out he had some personal things going on, but he was still trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, the client's frustrated, but we're advocating so hard for them, and we're here as a layer to be their representative. And so we were like, listen, like, yes, this guy had a personal thing, but like, you're going to have a gorgeous bathroom. We don't want to rush this or stress him out. Like, we want to do this right. Like, if it were our bathroom, we would rather it take 3 more days to lay the tile in the proper way and really be methodical about it. So to answer your question, I know I kind of said a lot, but we
No,
make
it's great.
mistakes every day, and I beat myself up about them terribly every day. But I try to come back to a place of like, we're trying to do the right thing and build a good culture and build something smart and honorable.
So that is amazing, because to me, what I hear from what you are saying is all about the intention that you have behind, right? Like, you want to do the best. There are situations sometimes out of your control that present in life, right? But your intention is always good and positive. And definitely you learn from those experiences. At least that's what I feel too in my experiences. Like, from all those mistakes, I'm so glad that those happened, because now I know better, right? And because sometimes when everything goes so easy, probably, I mean, we were lucky, or it was great that it went easy, but probably we didn't learn as much as when things don't go as smooth as we want them to do it, right? So tell me, have you? So I know you mentioned about the accelerator that you the incubator that you participated on. How did you end up with them? It was because you got involved in your career with the startups, and then the startup or the entrepreneurship bug kick you, or tell us a little bit how that happened to you.
Well, when my kids were really little, we moved to Tel Aviv, in Israel, and it's the startup nation, right? And it's in the water there, and something about just the attitude, the can-do attitude, the cut through the bullshit attitude, you know, like the whole country is making something from scratch, right? And so it was really empowering in a kind of like, it's hard to even like quantify exactly how. But I met a bunch of people in startups who were doing exciting things. And so I got involved with them because a lot of the startups there were approaching the US market, but didn't quite know the US consumer. So I came in and was able to kind of like translate their offering. I mean, yes, the language, but also really like the content, you know, like how do you speak how do you like take something that's really a value here, but package it in a way that resonates with the US consumer, which is not one-to-one with the Israeli consumer, right? Like we have different habits, like different priorities, whatever. So that's how I got involved in startups. And then the incubator, I really just knew through mutual people in that world. And I actually met them not long after COVID started, just as like a, hey, you're in this space, you guys all, do stuff like this, you should meet. And that was so fortuitous because, several months later, they were like, actually, we have this idea. Do you want to come on?
Awesome. And I know your husband is involved in the business. So tell us a little bit about that experience, how
Yeah.
it started and how it is going.
Yeah. So I started the business in August 2020. And Asher, my husband, had been he, was working at another startup, actually an Israeli tech startup in the healthcare space, from when we were living in Tel Aviv. And basically this past summer, they decided to kind of break off his piece of the business, which was veterinary, and sell it off, and it was good for everyone. But he was, fun employed at that time, and he was like building a fence, and like he was taking a minute because he was like working so hard for so long. Like he never, he was in the US Army, and then he just was like job. So he was like, okay, I'm going to take a intentional pause. At the same time, I was running the business basically alone with like a bunch of bolt-on contractors and the incubator. And I went back to IAC, the parent company, and I was like, pencils down, like we need a real investment and I need leadership to help me here to deliver on our brand promise. So they committed some money, and I started to interview CEOs. During that time, Asher was kind of like, well, that sounds cool. Oh, the total addressable market is like pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll throw my hat in the ring. And so he has like a lot of experience, in with labor. Like he ran a junk removal company for many years, and army leadership and with the startup. And it turns out that he was really the best guy for the job. And we got him interviewing with the incubator, and he was a really good fit. And he and I communicate very well. Obviously, we're running a home together.
Yes.
And I respect him, and I trust him. And it's going really well, actually. We have like very distinct work streams. I do operations and he does kind of sales and marketing and biz dev. And it's going really well. So he's the CEO.
I wondered when I heard that, why you didn't take the role of CEO, and why you were not looking for other team members in the team, and by you being the leader. It was something that it was your skill set. That was something.
Yeah. I'm really an executor. My superpower is I always know the next thing to do to get something done. Like I can see what's happening in a meeting and all the pieces that weave together, and I pull out a roadmap of like how to actually get from A to Z. Like that's my superpower. What I'm not as great at as the zoomed out strategy of the long term. I'm a little bit more like what's right in front of me, right? The next month or two, like how do we keep this going? And I think for me, I don't want to speak for other households, but it's like very female actually, right? Like I always think that I heard once like, and this doesn't apply to every home at all, but it does resonate with me, which is like, this is so like misogynistic maybe, but I don't know.
No,
All right, here I go.
I think you are being honest. I mean, it applies to your family and to your way of life. Everybody's different. So
I heard once, and I like this, like the woman is the ship
okay.
and the man is the captain. This is like so like gender normative, whatever, right? Like all the disclaimers, but like it's so interesting, right? Because like without the woman, like there's not a household, there's not like what, right? Like she's the day to day, like she's the structure, she's the foundation. There's nothing to captain without that, right? and she does like the man in the service of like allowing him to steer, right? That's kind of, I mean, that sounds, I'm embarrassed that we're recording this, but like that is a little bit like I am very good in keeping the ship running and day to day and building and
Well, I
executing.
don't see it as a negative thing, what you are saying. How I see it actually is a strength, because you do know yourself, you do
Yeah.
know your skills, you do know your strengths, right? And that is a very important thing when you are running a business, right? Like I know, for instance, that I'm not a marketer, for instance. So I understand my weaknesses, and what you are saying is very important when you are starting a business, and especially when I will say especially in construction, because in every industry is important. But the good thing about your decision, I feel, because you are a team anyway, and in construction, for him, and I'm being again, I'm kind of what you are saying. I'm again doing this masculinity and femininity, but as I know the construction industry, it is important, or it is good to have a male involved in the business. Just because and I'm not saying that only women doesn't work, just because sometimes because of the nature of the industry, sometimes that could be beneficial.
I could see that. Ironically, he has nothing to do with any of our contractors because I run that piece of it. I
I'm talking
mean,
about the
he,
business side. I'm talking about the sales, the business development.
oh yeah. Yeah, I could totally, yes, 100%. And Asher, I mean, I was speaking to like my strengths and weaknesses, but Asher, has an MBA. He knows his way around a P&L. He's very strategic, high level strategic. And I trust him because he sees from here like 5 years out and he'll model it out. And to me, that vision, I need that complementary vision. And I'm like, great, okay. Like I think the best example is like, I know every dollar on the cogs and every individual build and like how to squeeze that out. And he's the one who's like modeling together all the long-term, P&L that ladders all those individual builds up. So
How do you
um,
balance? How do you balance that personal life and professional life? I'm asking you that because my parents were entrepreneurs too, and they worked together too. And sometimes I could see that they struggled separating, making that line between like our professional life and our personal life. How did you guys manage that?
we canvassed some people that we're friends with who work together, and we got some good advice early on, and we set some pretty firm boundaries. Like after we come home from the office, we don't talk about it.
Mhm.
Um, and it's really that. I mean, we really just don't talk about work when we're not working because for me, I have like two brains. I have like, it's Jekyll and Hyde. I have like my work persona and my home persona, and they're so different. At
Yeah.
work, I'm very intense and very type A. At home, I'm like very hippie and like chill. And they like when I have to overlap them, my brain explodes. So like I am not good at juggling. So I can't and I won't. Like I cannot talk about work when my kids are around.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's been okay. And we have like a good couples therapist who I love. And he helped us navigate things when something gets a little bit sticky. But it's been really good because we communicate really well, and we trust each other.
And it's important what you are saying, creating those rules. I said, I don't think I know my parents didn't create those rules. They talk about business even at home, and they would end up like discussing stuff or sometimes even fighting.
What
Uh,
was their business?
so they own it was in construction. They own a rebar. In Colombia, we built a lot of the structures are in concrete and rebar.
Yep.
So they did all the shaping of all the rebar for all the building structures and bridges and all of that. So
Wow.
I grew up walking on top of rebar and not to fall down. And you
Oh
know,
my God.
yes. So
That's really cool.
yes, it was very, very, very cool. It was a great, I grew up working with them. So I've always,
You really grew up in the construction industry.
yes, I did.
That's a good bragging point. That's cool.
It is. Yes, and it was also for me, it was learning the sense of a business. And they also had 3 hardware stores. So I was like some weekends, like doing kind of the retailing part of it, like, like send the commercial part of it. And then sometimes I was in the business, the manufacturing, the working with the rebar and all of that. So yes, so I guess that's
Wow.
one of the reasons why I ended up studying civil engineering, because the goal was, I'm the oldest, the goal was for me to continue with their business. Unfortunately, at the time, with the drug problem that we had in Colombia, like the drug dealers started doing a lot of money laundering through construction. So then my parents couldn't really compete because, they couldn't, the competition was selling at their cost, right? So they couldn't really compete. So they ended up, it was a hard time for them because they ended up closing the business because they were not going to get involved with money laundering. So they couldn't really compete. And so I ended up studying civil engineering because that was my goal, but it's okay. I'm coming back. I'm still in the world of construction. So but it was a great school, a great experience. Um, so it was good. It was good. Yes. So
Wow.
get a
What
lot
a
of,
story. What a story.
yeah,
That's a yeah.
it's a fascinating story, and I do value their feedback. They help me a lot. They guide me a lot with the business too. So it is all for good. It is all for
Are they
good.
still in Colombia?
Yes, they are. They are still there. Yeah. So we go and visit them, or they come and visit us.
That's so nice.
Yeah, it is good. I don't know if we'll ever leave Colombia. I mean, Colombia is a great country to live. It's a
Yeah.
good weather, good people. So I don't
Yeah.
think they will ever leave that country.
Yeah. I heard someone recently, a young guy in his 20s moved to Bogota.
Yes.
And he's just like, because during COVID he went remote and he was like, it's the best city ever. So I just want to live there. And he's just like, that's where he's living now.
Yes. He's there. Yeah. Yeah. No, I never left Colombia like I left Colombia because I was gonna do my MBA and then come back. Like I was never like, oh, I cannot live in this country. I'm leaving. I was like, we didn't sell with my husband because we were already married. We didn't sell anything. We storage it because we were gonna come back after our MBA 2 years later. And I just say that life brought us where we are because we left. We were going to Spain because we didn't know English. But the program that we chose was in English because it was an international MBA. So we needed to learn English. So we came to New York City. We lived in New York City and we learned ESL in New York City, which was tough because you could live in New York City basically with Spanish. And people would speak to us in Spanish and we were like, no, we want to learn English. Please speak to us in English. So it was hard. And after a year of studying full-time English, now our savings were small because you cannot work or anything, right? We had a student's visa. And then we didn't have enough tuition to move to Spain. And so then we didn't want to go back to Colombia with our masters because that was the whole idea. So I had a friend in Boston at the time, and she was like, come to Boston, get your master's here. You are already here. You already have your student visa. Just do your master's here instead of going to Spain. And so my husband did his master's first. He's a systems engineer, so he's technology. And so he did his master's in computer science. And I got a job in Boston at the time. It was a huge project here. The Big Dig was happening. So they were looking for civil engineers. So I got a job pretty quickly. they sponsored my visa. And I mean, just like life happened like that. We were like, because I was like, what I'm gonna do while he takes his master. We couldn't take the master at the same time because we didn't have the money for the tuition. We couldn't, I mean, there was no the student loans for us because we were not citizens or residents of the United States, right? So we had to pay cash for our tuition. So I was like, I'm gonna look for a job, and I got it. So I just felt like, and then we were so in route with our jobs. He graduated, he got a job. So just life brought us where we are. So we never went back to Colombia. We ended up selling or gifting out our stuff there.
Wow.
That's our story. Yes, that's how we ended up here. But yes, Colombia, going back, Colombia is a great country to live. So yeah, my parents are still there. And I get their advice in terms of business also from them. So
Thank you for sharing your beautiful story with me. It's so impressive. Oh my God, what a journey. That's crazy.
yes, it is. It is. I share with you later. I did a tech talk, and the tech, I kind of tell a little bit about my story, and the tech was about joy and how I find joy in life throughout all these crazy experiences, right? So we all have a story. We all have our stories.
I
And
love
that's
that.
what for me is so important to understand and to learn about your story, because we all have different experiences and different stories. And I think that by sharing all of these stories, we help each other. And one of my goals is to bring more women into the construction industry. So in a way, I want to break that stereotype, right? Like that is hard to be a woman in the industry, that is, um, intimidating or things like that. And I think we do need more women in the industry. I feel like the industry could really benefit from our way of thinking. So that's why when I heard that you were in the industry, I'm like, Merisa, I would love for you to share your story, especially because you were not in the construction industry at all before, right? So it is
Yeah.
ended up here. And so going back to the industry, how has been your experience in the construction industry?
I love it. It's great. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's a really unique industry. I feel like, like any industry, there's all these different personality type buckets, right? And you kind of learn how to interact with different people. You learn kind of your script for how to make people take you seriously, and kind of like bowl through them underestimating you. And that's okay, like it turns into a bit of a game, um, and it's a challenge, right? Like
Have
what?
you seen a difference between, like, you were a lawyer, so you work in law before, and then you work in nonprofit? Is it a big difference? Like, is the tone or the way you present yourself, is it different or is still?
I think it's just people, I think you just people put on all different exteriors, and they have different showmanship, right? Like contractors really pride themselves on being the king of their castle, and feeling confident and like knowing how they do things, and like that's fantastic, right? So we learned early on that we need to just partner with them and empower them and like show up in the ways that work for them, that's comfortable, and basically just be like a back end mission control for them, and provide them with like the right tools that they need to succeed, right? And at the end of the day, it's just like understanding what their day looks like, what their constraints are, what their motivators are. They're people, right? So like we need to meet them where they are, and along the way earn their trust. I think that's it. It's about building trust at the end of the day with with our clients, and with our contractors, and also in our internal team, right? Like we see it all the time. Like inter-team collaboration. It's all about trust. You know, like one of our company mottos is do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And own it, right? So like those are things that we measure against, right? Like it feels like, you know, if you're ever giving someone criticism, constructive criticism, it's like, it feels like you're not actually owning this, you know, or like, did you do what you said you were going to do? Right? Like, how can we build a system where you can remember to do what you say you're going to do, or structures or whatever? So, you know, I think that's the heart of it. I think that cuts through a lot of the nonsense.
Yeah.
And you know, as a woman, just to back up for a second, like a woman in the construction industry, like I mean, you were raised in a hardware store, literally, walking across rebar. I wasn't. You know, my dad's a lawyer, but it's really just never being, I actually think being a woman serves me so well in this role, because
Awesome.
there is nothing worse than someone coming into a situation who doesn't know the answer, but because of their white male privilege or whatever, or bravado, they say they know the answer and they actually don't. That is devastating to like a construction work stream. Devastating, right? Like whether it's about a shower pan or a slope or how to affix tile, whatever, right? If you don't know the answer, there are major consequences, major. So as a woman with imposter syndrome and low confidence and all the things, I'm like, I will never assert anything unless I know 100% that it is true and I've researched it, or someone I trust has researched it, right? And I'll double check myself. I'll ask smart people. So, you know, day one of this industry, like I brought on Harvard trained architects to help advise. We have a builder in residence who's like, has an estimating company, right? Like I brought on certain advisors who have been, you know, GCs for 30 years. So nothing I do is ever assumptive. It's always like, it's actually, you know, very Israeli, right? Like this is something I learned in Israeli business. Like you should always assume someone's going to challenge you on a point, and you have to be ready with your proof, right? So like, it's like a show your work mindset. And that's something we say in our business, right? Like, don't just tell me that's the right valve. Show your work. Show me the document where it's the right valve. Show me what you researched. Show me who you spoke to. So like, if I say this is the right valve, I would bet my life on it, right? And I also learned to have like a very good bullshit sensor. So when like someone's like, yeah, it's the right valve, I'm like, how do you know that? Can you show me?
Yes.
So now my team knows, you know, like there's no assumption. If you have the wrong valve on site, it delays work 2 days.
Right. Yes.
You're wasting laborers' time. You're overnighting something if you can get the part, right?
Right.
There are major consequences for someone being assumptive. So I think like, you know, my background of like being like, right? Like as a lawyer, you can't just say a thing. You need to research it and build your case for it, right? And like, no one's just going to believe you. You need to prove it. You need to cite it. You need footnotes. Okay. That's what this requires, or else it explodes. We call them in our industry, in our company, legacy mistakes.
Okay.
Right? So it's like sometimes there'll be a mistake that like you didn't even know you made like 3 months ago when you put the wrong thing on a spec list.
Yes.
And then like 3 months later, it's on a pallet and we're like, and we've gotten smarter from then and whatever, but then it bites you. It's like a legacy mistake, right? Like it was from 3 months ago, we closed the feedback loop, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's because someone like was assumptive.
Yes. That is a very good point. Yeah, because if you do something wrong, or like later on the dimensions will not work, or something will not work, because construction is such a it's such a task after task uh, industry, right? Work. So you really have to go. And it's so amazing that you are relating that to your law career before, like just prove it. Kind of, you have to prove it. That is
Yeah.
amazing. So let me tell me a little bit about, since you touch about bringing these experts, talk to us about mentorship. Like, have you have them? Do you find value on those? What would you recommend?
I mean, I actually have not had the female professional leadership in my life that I would have wanted. And I'm always jealous of women who have. Recently in life, I've sought out some really amazing women, some of whom are on my team, some are not, who I've reached out to for advice. Because, you know, I have my husband who I respect so much, and he often really has the right take on a thing, but it is not always like authentic to me. Like I wanted my own voice.
Yeah.
And sometimes the way like a man would do something is not how I want to navigate a situation, is not how I want to show up at work, you know? So I've had the privilege of working with, you know, I have a really amazing, I worked with her for a little while, this really amazing entrepreneurship coach. And also, you know, the women in my life now, I have a few senior team members who I really respect their feedback. They've been around the block, and I love working with them. You know, I find them to be good. They give me good feedback. I think they're kind when I maybe am not perfect.
Yeah.
And I always feel like they're rooting for me, you know, and we have a mutual respect. Um, and I am always jealous though of people who have been like brought up and groomed, you know, because that wasn't my experience in law at all. And also like in the startup world, I just was really surrounded by men always. And I kind of had to, I think I felt like I had to show up in a male way to be in the room and respected. And now that I'm sitting in this seat, I feel like I can kind of decide how I want to show up in a more authentic way to me, which is feminine, but
Yes.
still powerful.
Yes.
And that's like,
it's not the opposite of the other one. That's how I feel it, right?
yeah. So it's a journey. I feel like I'm starting that journey now and just really kind of understanding the power in female leadership. I'm just understanding how that applies to me personally.
And
Really.
that is so awesome and so important. And that's why I feel like there should be more women in the industry, because we need those models, we need that representation, we need those mentors that have done it or have lived that path, right? To help the girls or females that are coming after us. So maybe we can become mentors for them.
Yeah. Like I have this girl, her name is Ruthie Shoulder. I would recommend like anyone works with her if they're, you know, trying to kind of level up their career or find like a way to show up. Ruthie Shoulder. She's amazing. And she does coaching now. She had her own consultancy for many years, and she's a very impressive lady. But I was telling her how I felt like a narrative I had in my life was like, I was always managing people, and I resented it, right? Like I'm managing my little kids, like everything they need to do to get out the door. I'm like, shoes on. Okay, back up. I was managing my husband. I was managing people at work. I was managing my mother. I was managing contractors. I was managing people. And I was like, why do I have to manage all these adults? Right. And she was like, you're not managing them. You need to change the narrative. You are a really clear communicator, and you're telling people what you think should happen and what you need. And it totally flipped the whole thing for me. And it would like made me like a partner in those conversations rather than like condescending, you know, like it really, really changed the lens through which I saw my life, you know, and it was like so impactful for me. So I think you need people in your life who've had like experience and have wisdom to kind of like draw you out of your own weird place sometimes, you know?
Especially when you are an entrepreneur, I feel, because it could be very lonely, right? So having that tribe, I call it the tribe, especially for women, I think, because I think we communicate more, or we need, I don't know if we need that more, but at least we express it more. So I feel like guys also need it, but they just don't express it as much. And having that tribe, like I have my tribe of female entrepreneurs where I go and because entrepreneurship is not easy, right? But when you are out there in the world, sometimes you just have to say like, oh, everything is great, everything is growing, like we are doing, we are successful. But it's hard. It is hard. So I have my tribe of female entrepreneurs where I'm like, oh my God, today was the worst day. We lost this. I am struggling with this. I don't know how to approach this customer, or like all of these challenges that we face every day, right? So having that tribe and that friendship, and especially if they are entrepreneurs, that they do understand what you live every day, is so important. So important.
Yeah. I mean, we have that with moms, or I have my mom chats, and now I'm starting to have the professional chats, which is definitely overdue, but I love it.
We should create one, because it is, I was part of an accelerator for only female founders, and we have our group of all female founders, and it is so, even if everybody's struggling with the same thing, it is good to hear that you are not the only one, right? Even if you
Oh
don't,
yeah, it makes everything better. It normalizes everything. It makes everything better. 100%.
like, oh my God, okay, I'm not the only one, because sometimes I'm like, what I'm doing wrong? You see, like, why doesn't, things come to me? Like, it's so frustrating. And then when you hear everybody's having similar challenges or the same, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
it's not only me, or it's not only this industry, or it's not only my business, or
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
so
Normalizing things is, I mean, it's community, right?
it is. I am really grateful for your time, Merisa. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
And I'm glad that you shared your story. And hopefully with this story, we can show other women and other men in the industry that there are so many paths to this industry, and they are all good, and they are all valuable. And it makes for a good life to live in this industry as well.
Yeah. Can we start off Women in Construction WhatsApp group?
Yay! Let's do it. Let's do it. Yes.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay.
After this call. Okay, Merisa, thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Have a beautiful day.
Okay. Bye.